Unlike many royal marriages, the bond between Queen Victoria and Prince Albert was a true love story. They idealized family life, becoming a model for the whole world. Despite the fact that their deep affection for each other was well documented, especially in the diaries of Queen Victoria herself, where she wrote about her love for her husband, their passion did not arise immediately. Albert was a German prince, and at the same time Victoria's cousin. The first meeting took place at the celebration of her 17th birthday in England. Victoria noted in her diary her sympathy for Albert, although another cousin, Prince Augustus, also claimed her attention. Despite this, Albert and Victoria maintained correspondence with each other. The age difference between Victoria and Albert was only 3 months. Both of them were born with the help of the same midwife. By 1839, Victoria was enjoying relative freedom, rejoicing in the status of an unmarried young queen, and even declaring that she did not need marriage. However, in October 1839, Albert arrived in England again, and a few days later, according to royal protocol, Victoria proposed to Albert. The wedding ceremony took place on February 10, 1840, in the Royal Chapel of St. James. Almost immediately after the wedding, the Queen became pregnant and gave birth to her first child, Princess Victoria, 9 months after the wedding. The physical attraction between the spouses has always remained strong, and in the period from 1840 to 1857, Victoria brought 9 children into the world. Victoria and Albert ruled a vast empire that remained dominant in world politics until the end of the XIX century. This empire included the lands of Australia, Canada, the Indian subcontinent, and most of Africa. Their descendants established marriages with representatives of royal houses all over Europe, from Denmark to Russia. As a result, Victoria became a grandmother for as many as 40 grandchildren. Despite the strong desire to create a strong family, none of them had the skills necessary for this. Victoria's childhood is overshadowed by failures. Her mother kept the future queen isolated in Kensington Palace, not encouraging friendly relations, which led to a lack of mutual affection. The death of her father in early childhood had a significant impact on the girl, and the only man in her environment was her mother's despised advisor, Sir John Conroy. Albert also went through a difficult childhood. His father led a dissolute lifestyle and did not pay attention to any of his sons, and his mother left the country after an affair on the side and the collapse of the family. Victoria was disgusted with pregnancy and considered children unpleasant and ugly. Therefore, nurses were hired for all 9 children from the moment of birth, since the process of breastfeeding disgusted the queen. Her children actually grew up without maternal love, replaced by luxury and abundance, which led to their pampering. The main condition for receiving all the benefits was to maintain the appearance of a happy royal family outside their rooms. The British King George V, the Russian Tsarina Alexandra, wife of Tsar Nicholas II, and the German Kaiser Wilhelm II, the heads of 3 warring families during the First World War, were actually all grandchildren of Victoria and Albert. Victoria managed to successfully manage the complex relationship between her grandchildren during her lifetime, but after her death in 1901, the world began to shake, and Europe was approaching war. Kaiser Wilhelm II stated that if Victoria had still been alive, perhaps the First World War would not have happened. She probably would not have allowed a conflict between her relatives. Hidden behind closed doors, relationships in the royal family were often strained, including the relationship between spouses. Albert was not popular with the British public. His status as a prince was relatively low, and not only was he of German descent, but his wealth seemed insufficient for this position. He was denied the title of peer, the highest nobility, as well as the right to join the House of Lords because of anti-German sentiments in Britain. In fact, there were constant attempts to limit his political influence. Albert received the title of Prince Consort only in 1857, 17 years after his wedding with Victoria. During the time when his wife was passionate about performing royal duties, he had no formal role, since the management of the royal house was carried out by Victoria and the former governess Baroness Lesen. It was a time when Albert took on a significant part of the responsibility for the upbringing and education of children. To take his position with dignity, being just a husband, not the head of the house. These words were written in a letter from Prince Albert. Victoria was careful to delegate some of her official duties to Albert, as she was reluctant to allow anyone to interfere in royal affairs. Nevertheless, frequent pregnancies forced her to shift some things to her spouse, as she was forced to temporarily withdraw from active activity because of this. In the personal sphere, Albert became a close and reliable confidant for Victoria, whom she considered her support, while at the same time reasonably evaluating and supporting his ideas within reason. The problem of the distribution of power remained relevant in their marriage. Albert supported anti-slavery initiatives, promoted art and education. He also feared a repeat of the history associated with the mental disorder of his grandfather George III, who ruled for 60 years and periodically suffered from mental disorders. Family tensions were also linked to their eldest son, the future Edward VII. The prince devoted himself to entertainment and an immoral lifestyle, not meeting the high expectations of his parents. It is believed that hemophilia, a hereditary disease that affects blood clotting, spread across Europe through the children of Victoria and Albert. The couple's eighth child, Leopold, suffered from hemophilia and died at the age of 30 after a minor injury caused an internal hemorrhage. Two of the couple's 5 daughters, Alice and Beatrice, are carriers of hemophilia, and this genetic disease has been transmitted to the royal families of Spain, Germany, and Russia. Albert passed away at the age of 42, having been exposed to pneumonia in 1861. After his death, Victoria was never able to recover. She plunged into a deep depression and remained in a state of grief for the rest of her life. She always wore a black dress and rarely appeared in public. She even ordered Albert's clothes and shaving supplies to be kept in order, thus preserving his presence in her daily life. After Albert's death, Victoria tried to close all the flaws in their marriage, idealizing her spouse. Having lost him, she lost both her advisor and her friend. About a year and a half after his departure, she wrote in one of the letters that she hoped not to live to old age in order to meet her beloved husband faster. Nevertheless, Victoria lived another 40 years after his departure, finding solace in the company and friendship of several men.